In this video, we will be discussing point of view in literary texts. So in a literary text, the point of view always focuses on the main character or the narrator. So you need to ask yourself, who is telling this story? So the point of view is the perspective from which the story is told. So this is our definition right here, the perspective from which the story is told. That's what the point of view is. In order to determine the point of view, the first thing you need to do is you need to ignore any sort of dialogue or speech, unless, of course, it's thoughts coming directly from a character's head. And it's easy to tell when someone's thinking, especially in first person, because usually those thoughts will be in italics, which means they'll be slanted. The second thing you need to do when determining point of view is to look for pronouns. This will identify whether you are looking at first, second, or third person point of view. So pronouns such as I, me, we, us, he, she, there. The third thing you need to do is, if you are in third person, then you need to highlight all the thoughts and feelings in the passage to determine how many different characters they belong to. This will help you determine what type of third person you are looking at. So let's look at our guiding questions. The first question says, how can we use clues to infer the point of view in the story? Well, that's pretty simple. If you are looking for things such as pronouns and characters' thoughts, that will help you easily figure out what the point of the story is. So there's your answer for number one. We can look at clues such as looking at pronouns and characters' thoughts to infer the point of view of a story. Now our second question asks, how does changing the point of view impact the story? Well, changing the point of view definitely changes how much information we as the readers can see, technically, how much we perceive. Because remember, depending on who the point of view is coming from, that will change how much we as the reader can perceive as well, because our perception is determined on who is telling the story. So by changing the point of view, it can impact the story by either limiting or adding information for the reader. The more information the narrator perceives, the more information we as the reader will be able to perceive as well, since that's the information we are receiving as well. So let's move on to the next part of our point of view notes. You'll notice that you have a packet of point of view notes, and the first page that I want you to look at is the page that has all of these little cameras on it. Go ahead and cut out the cameras and fold on the dotted line, and you're going to want to separate these from third, objective, omniscient, and limited into one pile, and then first, second, and third into another pile. And what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on this little folded part so that these are going to essentially make flaps. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and do that, and then come back when you're done. So I have gone ahead and I've glued in my first, second, and third person, and you'll notice that they're flaps like this. And the reason we're doing that is because we will be writing notes here and we will be adding an example here. So the first thing you're going to need to know, let's start with first person, is that first person point of view is always going to use the same pronouns. They're going to be using pronouns like I, me, and my. Now, first person is when a character in the story is a narrator. So let's go ahead and write that. A character in the story is the narrator. And the narrator is using pronouns such as I, me, and my. When telling the story. So you're going to be writing in the notes just like this under all of the tabs. Okay? Now, on another page, you'll notice that there were little examples. I want you to go ahead and cut out the 3 smallest examples because we'll be using those on these pages. Now, put those aside and let's go ahead and finish talking about second and third person. So let's look at second person point of view. In second person point of view, the reader is the narrator or main character of the story. In this case, the story is going to use pronouns you because you are the main character. Keep in mind that second point of view is very rare and you won't see it very often. Oftentimes you'll be choosing between first and third person point of view. Now let's look at third person point of view. In third person point of view, the narrator is outside of the story and they are the ones telling the story. In this case, the narrator is going to use pronouns such as he, she, they, and their. And remember that there are 3 types of third person point of view. Now let's look at those 3 examples that we had. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to categorize them. So let's look at the first example here. So in this first example, I'm going to zoom it in so you can see. It says, I found myself lost in the woods, absolutely and utterly alone. I can't find my camping group. I'm so happy that my mom packed a flare gun in my backpack. I should probably take it out and shoot it up in the air. Then hopefully someone will come for me and rescue me from this dark forest. So the first thing we want to do is we want to highlight the pronouns. So let's look and see what pronouns we can highlight. After highlighting, I noticed that a lot of the pronouns have to do with I, me, my, or I'm. So which person point of view should this go under? This would definitely go under first person point of view. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find my first person point of view camera. I'm going to lift it up and I'm going to glue this right underneath. So go ahead and take your glue and glue this right underneath. First person point of view, just like this. So now I can look at my first person point of view camera and I can lift it up and I have an example of what the text would look like and the definition of the word. Let's look at another definition. So we have second and third person point of view next. So let's look at this example. It says, you're walking through the woods. There's no one around and you're very lost. You can't seem to find your camping group. Thankfully, you brought your flare gun with you in your backpack. You take it out and shoot it up into the sky. Moments later, your camping group comes to you and rescues you from the dark woods. So the first thing you want to do is look for the pronouns. Now, if you notice, there are a lot of yous and yours in this story. So what person point of view would this be in? This would be in second person point of view. So go ahead and glue it underneath your second person flap. So now your second person flap should look like this. You should have your story with your definition. We have one more. So let's look at the story. As she walked deeper into the woods, she realized there was no one else around and she was very lost. Her camping group was nowhere around. Reaching into her bag, she pulled out her flare gun. Her mom packed her and shot it up into the sky. Moments later, her camping group came and rescued her from the dark woods. So which point of view would this be in? Looking at the pronouns, we can see that there are a lot of she's and hers. And typically, she's, hers, he's, and hims would be used in what type of person point of view? Usually, it's third person point of view. So go ahead and take this, flip up your third person point of view, and glue it in. And let's move on to the next page. So on this page, you should have third limited, third objective, and third omniscient. Let's start with third limited. Third limited point of view is when the narrator is limited to only knowing one single character's thoughts and feelings. Third objective is when the narrator doesn't know any of the character's thoughts and feelings. It's as if they're an outsider looking in and they can only tell you what they see. And third omniscient is when the narrator knows all of the character's thoughts and feelings. It's like they're God of the world and they can see into the minds of every single character. So on the same page that you had the previous examples, you're going to want to go ahead and cut out and then fold in half the next 3 examples. let's go ahead and let's try to put these into order. Let's start with this first one here. Let me zoom in so you can see it better. So for these, we're going to read them and we're going to look for what the characters are thinking. Okay? So it says, Cynthia continued to wander deeper into the forest. Her footsteps echoed in the emptiness of the woods. Eventually, she made the realization that she was completely alone. She immediately stopped in her steps and started digging in her bag. After a few seconds, she removed what appeared to be a flare gun. She fidgeted with it for a second and then pointed it up at the sky. A loud noise accompanied the bright light that suddenly shot up into the sky. Cynthia then patiently sat down and waited for her camping group to find her. It took her a few minutes, but eventually she was able to hear the footsteps of the other campers. She was safe at last and reunited with her camping group. Well, looking at this, I don't really necessarily see any thoughts or feelings from any of the characters. So what type of third person would this be? If I don't see any thoughts or feelings, that means that this is actually third person objective. So you're going to take this piece of paper and you're going to fold it in half where you bring the bottom up, and then you're going to open your flap and you're going to glue it in right there. So I'm going to go ahead and take my glue. Again, gluing the back of the camera piece, and then this is going to go right on top. So now this can be folded down so that I can see my example. Let's look at the next example. So this one says, Cynthia continued to wander deeper into the forest. She grew more and more terrified with each step. Okay, so we're actually starting to see feelings from one of our characters. Notice, it says that she grew more and more terrified. This shows how she feels. So I can see how one character feels right now. Oh no, I think I lost my camping group, she gasped to herself as she made the realization that she was completely alone. So she made a realization. She immediately stopped in her steps and started digging in her bag. Oh, come on, I know it's in here somewhere. My mom refused to let me leave unless I had it. So this right here is italicized text, which means that this is what this character is thinking. So remember, you want to look for anything that the character is thinking or feeling. So I should highlight that as well. After shuffling through her bag some more, she found what she was looking for. Yes, she exclaimed with excitement. So now I can see how she feels. She feels excited. She pointed the flare gun into the sky and shot it with her eyes closed. Then she sat on the ground and waited. Thankfully, within minutes, her camping group had found her. Now, in this case, I can only see what one character thinks or feels because it's all stuck to what Cynthia is thinking and feeling. So what type of third person would that be? In this case, since I'm limited to only Cynthia, that means that I am dealing with third person limited. So go ahead and glue that in to third person limited. So now that you have that glued into third person limited, let's look at our last example. Cynthia continued to wander deeper into the forest with her friend Amanda. They both grew more and more terrified with each step. So I'm going to highlight a couple of things. Notice it says they both grew more and more terrified. So this is how they both feel. So that's one thing I'm going to highlight because that's how both of my characters feel. So I'll highlight whenever they feel similar things in yellow. Oh no, I think we lost the camping group, Cynthia gasped to herself as she made the realization that they were completely alone. So Cynthia has come to a realization. So Cynthia gasped and made the realization that they were completely alone. She immediately stopped Amanda from walking and started digging in her bag. What are you looking for? Amanda inquired. The way Cynthia was acting was starting to worry her. So Amanda, we're going to put in pink, and that was starting to worry her more than the fact that they were lost because she feels worry. Yes, Cynthia exclaimed with excitement. So Cynthia feels excitement. So I had put Cynthia in blue. She pointed the flare gun to the sky and shot it with her eyes closed. Then she sat on the ground and waited next to Amanda. Within their minutes, their camping group had found them, and then notice it says everyone was so happy. So everyone was so happy. Now, if you'll notice, in this example, I'm seeing multiple characters' thoughts and feelings. When you see multiple characters' thoughts and feelings, what type of third person does that mean you're dealing with? It means you're dealing with third person omniscient. So go ahead and take this example, fold the bottom up, and glue it under your third omniscient tab. Moving on to the next page, you're going to go ahead and cut out and glue in the next page like so. So go ahead and pause the video so that you can do that. Now with this exercise, we are going to read the passage and we're going to highlight the clues that help us determine whether the passage is written in first, second, or third person, as well as any clues that would help us determine whether it is objective, limited, or omniscient third person. So let's go ahead and let's look at the passage. Why on earth did I not let Mrs. Johnson drive me home? I am so stupid, Lacey said under her breath as she walked down the dark path, nervously checking over her shoulder every couple of minutes. The walk from her neighbor's house was longer than she remembered. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. It felt to her as if there was a pair of eyes boring into the back of her head. All sorts of terrifying thoughts were running through her head. Bloodthirsty wolves in the forest, a psychotic murderer stalking her. The forest beside her was dark as midnight and full of strange noises and shadows. She broke into a run. I'm almost there, she thought. Just a little ways longer. As she rounded the corner and saw her house in the distance, she sighed with relief. She never felt so happy to walk into her brightly lit kitchen and see her mother smiling. From the edge of the forest, a towering and dark figure emerged. Next time, it thought. The figure laughed menacingly, feeling elated by the fear the girl had shown. Showing a mouth full of sharp, glistening teeth, he melted back into the shadows of the woods. Okay, so let's try to figure out what the point of view of this story is. Remember, the first thing we need to do when determining point of view is we need to ignore all dialogue. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cross it out. So here at the beginning, I see some dialogue, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to cross it out. We don't need that dialogue. Okay, that dialogue is just going to distract us. The second thing we need to do is we need to look for pronouns. So I'm going to take my pink highlighter and I'm going to go ahead and go through and highlight any and all pronouns. Okay, so I've gone through and I've highlighted not only just all my pronouns, but I've also highlighted characters' names. So you'll notice that we have a few characters. We have Lacey, which is the girl, and we have the figure. Now, a lot of the pronouns are she and her, and it and he. And so because of that, that's hinting that I'm in third person. So I need to try to figure out what type of third person I am in. So the next thing I need to do is I need to look for characters' thoughts and feelings. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight each character's thoughts in different colors. I'm going to first focus on Lacey's thoughts and see if she has any thoughts or feelings. And I'm going to do that in blue. So looking at Lacey, there's quite a few thoughts and feelings for her. First and foremost, we notice that she's nervously checking over her shoulder every couple of minutes. So she feels nervous at the beginning. It also says that she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, and it felt to her that there was a pair of eyes boring into the back of her head. So these are how she feels. She starts having terrifying thoughts, and then she eventually thinks to herself, I'm almost there, just a little ways longer, and she sighs with the feeling of relief towards the end. And finally, she never felt so happy to walk into her house. In our second paragraph, we see that there's a figure towering dark and emerging from the forest. Now, this character doesn't have that many thoughts and feelings. It simply just says, next time, it thought, but it does feel elated by her fear. And so we do get to see the thoughts and feelings of more than one character. So if you'll notice in the first paragraph here, we get character number 1. So we have character number 1. And then in this paragraph here, we have character number 2. So because we have the thoughts and feelings of more than one character, we know that this would be third person omniscient. So let's go ahead and let's answer the questions on the following page. So the first question says, what point of view is the passage written in, and what is the evidence? So let's go ahead and let's write our answers below on the lines. So in this case, the answer is that the passage is written in third person omniscient point of view because the narrator knows the thoughts and feelings of all the characters that are involved. Let's look at number 2. How would the story be different if the point of view were changed? Well, the point of view were changed. That means that we would be either limited or objective in regards to the point of view. And in this case, limited and objective would be giving us less information. So we would be perceiving less as the characters would be perceiving less. So the answer would be, if the point of view were changed, the reader would not know the thoughts and feelings of all the characters, so the information the reader receives would be impacted because it would be limited. Finally, the last question says, how does this particular point of view contribute to the suspense of the story? Well, obviously there is suspense, and it's because of the dramatic irony. And the dramatic irony is when the reader knows something in the story that the characters don't or are unaware of. And it's because of this dramatic irony that we are able to build suspense. So the answer is, this particular point of view contributes to the suspense because it allows for the use of dramatic irony, which is when the reader knows something in the story that the characters don't know of yet. In this case, we know something is out there waiting for Lacey, and Lacey does not. And so that's why it develops suspense. Okay, hopefully now you understand how to identify and analyze point of view in literary text.